humor. So I'm here to speak to the possibility of changes to the procedural bylaw and code of conduct, which were proposed following a review of an exceptionally challenging meeting. The report frames these changes as simply looking to strengthen policies and procedures in the interest of efficient meetings and appropriate decorum. And through a white lens, these changes probably seem appropriate and reasonable. However, just as with the current revision, or the recent, I should say, revision of sign lighting rules, anti-Palestinian racism underpins these suggestions. Many of these changes are an unnecessary limitation on freedom of speech and on the actions of members of the public and councillors alike that will do nothing more than highlight how much this governing body continues to miss what the public is asking of them. As the changes revolve around, and I quote from the report, hopes of avoiding a repeat occurrence of the events of the January meeting, I feel it's necessary to review the controversial motion. Entitled Support for Israelis and Palestinians Living in Niagara, the motion consisted of 5 items.
Point of order, Chair.
Point
of order. It's got nothing to do with the report before us and the purpose of the delegation.
If you feel that way, I'll strike it.
all delegates to make direct reference to the proposed changes and not get into other issues.
It's very hard not to do one or the other given the nature of the way the report's
phrased,
but
enforce that on all of the people equally.
I'll do my best to adjust my remarks then. So, I remember my disbelief when I heard that our council was removing an agenda item for not pertaining to Niagara business. It was an ironic statement because it was the calculated and coordinated efforts of councillors that caused division in Niagara. Actions that not only removed the agenda item and prevented delegates from speaking, but further silenced any discussion with a call to question, killing the opportunity for debate on removing the motion. Then another 2 councillors referred the minutes to the Integrity Commissioner at the subsequent council meeting in February, effectively barring discussion of the motion yet again. Similar attitudes have been echoed with divisive either-or talk by councillors during the last...
Councillor Redekop, a point of order.
Sorry. This is a recitation of what happened on January the 25th, which we've already, I believe, established is not part of this report, nor are comments relative to it to be made in by the delegates with respect to the report.
That is a legitimate point of order, and you notice I enforce that against the first person who is not expressing a view that you're expressing and was equally eager to speak about that particular meeting, and so that's outside of the realm of...
Sorry, I thought I was moving forward from that meeting by mentioning February's meeting, and then I was going to comment on last meeting. Is that okay?
You can try.
I can try. All right, then I will try to move further, just saying that I feel the frustration of councillors today and previous meetings that you feel this doesn't pertain to Niagara business, and attempts have been made to shut that conversation down. They're still being made that way today. And that's why members of the public continue to come and try to talk about this. Instead of heeding subsequent delegations from the people most impacted, councillors continue to ignore public opposition and criticism. And knowing that council has actively created division and is seemingly incapable of adopting a both-and mentality, of seeing the intersectional nature of racism within issues, to my mind is of greater concern than any recommendations proposed by the Integrity Commissioner. So how does regional staff recommend avoiding a recurrence of the circumstances that surrounded the January meeting moving forward? One change suggested is to mandate a seconder be identified for non-core motions before they're placed on the agenda, saying this will avoid the potential to disappoint delegates who have registered to speak. I fail to see how this will prevent disappointment if similar political tactics are used again. In this case, the seconder had no opportunity to second the motion, and technical issues with the request to speak list were cited in the report to address concerns surrounding failures in administration that night. Language around jurisdiction is also suggested to be amended, but to what end? The motion for Palestine was not acting outside of jurisdiction as defined by the Municipal Act. It was merely giving voice to the desire of Niagara residents to amplify action initiated at the federal level. We feel like our federal politicians are not listening to us. We don't want to feel that way about our local politicians. Most concerning, though, are the changes limiting fraternization and engagement with the public gallery and those regarding signage and decorum, which have been talked about by previous delegates. In brief, these changes amount to a ban on anything that might be deemed a distraction, be it signage, props, contact with delegates, disruptive behavior, etc., on the grounds that it may hinder deliberations and diminish the focus necessary for making informed decisions on behalf of the community. I'm quoting the report. This seems to me the definition of a slippery slope and begs the question of how effective banning is as a strategy. Consider the many bans we see being enacted south of the border. Bans on books, drag shows, abortion, travel. Pardon?
You reached 5 minutes, so would
Oh,
you give a
come
final
on.
wrap up?
I'm sorry, I really shouldn't have tried to talk about any of the other. I thought it was relevant because it was relevant to the report, but my most important things are in this last section. Could I have
You may have a final sentence.
a
to wrap
final
up.
sentence? Okay. Decades of systemic racism are at play here, and if we cannot acknowledge that, the need for DEI work in Niagara grows more clear. The recommendations in this report are cited as responsive to Council's strategic priority of creating a more effective region. But when this is done at the expense of a more equitable region, I wonder, can you still stand by them?
Thank you for your presentation.